Гейджен найкраще реагує на крапки. Кожні 3 крапки дають паузу приблизно 0,5-0,8 секунди. Буду використовувати їх стратегічно, одинарні, для коротких зупинок, подвійні, для довших між секціями, 120 million Americans. That is not a projection. That is not a worst-case estimate. That is the current verified count of people in this country living with high blood pressure right now. Nearly 1 in 3 adults walking around with a condition their doctors have, for decades, labelled essential hypertension. Essential. As if the word carries meaning. It does not. It is a medical euphemism for we do not know why this is happening. And here is the thing. That admission, buried quietly in clinical language and Wikipedia entries and the intake forms at every cardiology practice in this country, that admission is either the most extraordinary failure in the history of modern medicine, or it is something else entirely. 50 years, billions in research funding. And the official answer is still, cause unknown. You have probably been told to cut the salt, and that is not wrong. But it is not the whole story. It is not even close to the whole story. Because the moment you start pulling on the actual data, the moment you sit with the Harvard research and the epidemiological comparisons and the basic cellular biology of blood pressure regulation, a different picture starts to form. Not of ignorance, of imbalance, a ratio, one that the American diet has quietly, catastrophically destroyed, and that the medical industry has spent 50 years treating the consequences of, rather than the cause. The ratio is sodium-to-potassium. Here is what the Harvard data shows. High sodium intake is associated with roughly an 18% increase in cardiovascular risk. High potassium intake is associated with roughly an 18% decrease. Symmetrical. Mirror perfect. As if someone designed it that way, because in a sense someone did. About 2 million years ago, when your Paleolithic ancestors were eating 11,000 milligrams of potassium a day from wild plants and roots and leaves, and almost no processed sodium at all. That ratio, high potassium, low sodium, was the chemical context your cardiovascular system evolved inside. It is the water your biology learned to swim in. Now stay with me, because this is where the mechanism stops being abstract. Potassium is doing 4 distinct things in your vascular system simultaneously, and none of them are trivial. First, it relaxes smooth muscle in artery walls, like unclenching a fist. When potassium is adequate, vessels dilate. When it is depleted, they constrict. That is pressure. Second, potassium directly suppresses sympathetic nervous activity. It blunts the adrenaline signal. Less adrenaline, less arterial tension, lower pressure. Third, it protects vascular endothelium, the single cell lining of every blood vessel you have, from oxidative damage, reducing arterial stiffness and inflammatory narrowing over time. Fourth, it improves insulin sensitivity. And yes, that matters here, because insulin resistance drives sodium retention in the kidney, which increases fluid volume, which increases pressure. These 4 pathways are not theoretical. They are documented, mechanistically precise, and collectively explain essentially everything about the so-called unknown origins of essential hypertension. And yes, this is also where you might want to subscribe, because the second half of this gets darker before it gets useful. If you want to know what a system looks like when it profits from not solving what it could solve, stay here. Shut-Turin. Now, let us talk about what happens when you go to a doctor with high blood pressure. The most commonly prescribed first-line treatment is a diuretic, a water pill. The logic is simple and not wrong. Reduce fluid volume, reduce pressure, it works. The problem is that diuretics, particularly thiazide diuretics, the ones prescribed to tens of millions of Americans, flush potassium from the body aggressively, chronically, which means the treatment for a condition substantially caused by potassium deficiency actively depletes potassium further. And when the potassium depletion produces symptoms, cramping, fatigue, palpitations, weakness, the solution is a prescription for supplemental potassium. A bottle of 99 milligram tablets, sold back to you as medicine. Let this land for a moment. You are deficient in a mineral, boron. That deficiency contributes substantially to elevated blood pressure. The treatment depletes that mineral further. The depletion is then treated with a pharmaceutical form of the same mineral. And the original condition, the one labelled essential, the one with unknown cause, is managed indefinitely. Not solved. Managed. At roughly a $50 billion annual market for antihypertensives, indefinitely is a very profitable timeline. Now there is a reason you're getting 99 milligrams in that tablet, and not 500, not 1,000. And here is the thing about that number. It traces back to research from the 1960s, research that flagged high-dose potassium supplementation as potentially damaging to the gastrointestinal tract. The research was conducted on fasting subjects, given potassium in concentrated salt form, on an empty stomach. It was, by most modern assessments, a study of delivery mechanism toxicity, not potassium toxicity. But the 99 milligram limit became regulatory doctrine, and it has never meaningfully changed. The damage was never really potassium's. The blame just stayed with it. Before we get to the answer, drop a comment. Has your doctor ever mentioned potassium when discussing your blood pressure? See, I want to know how common this conversation is, because here is the actual number your body was built for. 4,700 milligrams a day is the current recommended adequate intake. Your Paleolithic ancestors were getting 11,000. The average American gets around 2,500. We are not slightly below the threshold. We are living at less than a quarter of the intake our cardiovascular system evolved, expecting, while simultaneously drowning in sodium. Roughly 3,500 milligrams a day, most of it from processed and packaged foods that did not exist until a century ago. The ratio has inverted. That is the whole story. And yes, one mineral does not cure everything. Hypertension is multifactorial. Genetics matter. Obesity matters. Sleep and stress and sedentary behavior all matter. This is not a claim that potassium is magic. It is a claim that a system with a financial interest in lifetime pharmaceutical management of a chronic condition has no particular incentive to loudly, relentlessly, repetitively tell you to eat sweet potatoes and white beans and dark leafy greens and avocado. No incentive to explain that the most powerful intervention available for most people with essential hypertension is dietary, is cheap, is available at any grocery store, and has been documented in the peer-reviewed literature for decades. What would happen if that were the message? What would happen if every appointment started with the ratio instead of the prescription pad? You are standing in your kitchen. There is a bunch of Swiss chard on the counter, a sweet potato in the pantry, a can of white beans in the cabinet. Your body has been signalling a deficiency for years. It called it hypertension. Your doctor called it essential. The cause, they said, is unknown. But you know what it is now. And the most radical thing you can do for your heart is also, it turns out, the most ordinary.